Content warning. Episodes of Grey Matter may contain themes and depictions of extreme mental illness, traumatic bodily harm, and death. If you aren't in the right headspace to engage with those depictions right now, maybe this episode should wait for another time. Otherwise, proceed with caution.
Hello, and welcome back to Grey Matter. You might notice I'm still here, mainly because not a single one of the 43 lottery tickets I bought last night netted me anything more than empty pockets. Sure, I won $1 on one of them, but that's worse than nothing. I don't know if you're a gambler, but there's one thing all of us have to bet on: the future. Whether it's investing in the stock market, forcing children into a cold, cruel world so that later you can force them to take care of you, or saving up for retirement. Yeah, right. We all have to plan for a future that may never come. After all, the only thing guaranteed to happen to all of us is death, and whatever comes after is exactly as much of a gamble as the rest of it. Not that I'm advocating for Pascal's wager, but in a world chock-a-block full of idiotic religions, it feels a bit like spinning a roulette wheel when you've bet everything on red 5. Honestly, though, what choice do we have? It's all guesswork anyway. This tape is called Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar, and it's... Actually, I can't quite remember this one. It's familiar somehow, but it's got a different texture to it, like it wasn't quite born here. Well, however it got to our shelves, it's part of the store now, and it certainly feels like it belongs. I'll let you find out why. Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar. Written and directed by Jonathan Inbody, and adapted from the short story of the same name by Edgar Allan Poe. My name is Edwin Downey. My friends call me Ned. What you are about to watch is a fully produced and edited video segment created for a national news channel. After the segment's completion, those of us who worked on it were sat down and told that it would not air, at any time or under any circumstances. While the channel's leadership destroyed the master tape, and believes they destroyed all existing copies, my cameraman Troy Casey managed to smuggle out a tape containing a rough cut of the segment by hiding it under his shirt just before he was escorted from the building. In the years since, everyone involved in the segment's production have found it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to find gainful employment in the field of news media. We have been added to an unofficial blacklist maintained by those in power, a small collection of names under a heading that reads, "Hard to work with." Some of us have landed on our feet, but others... Troy. Well, the reason you're watching this right now is because 5 days ago, Troy Casey killed himself. That's what they're saying, anyway, but if you knew what we did, then... I don't know. Maybe it's true, but to me, it just doesn't make sense. If they were so afraid of a panic that they ruined our careers, tried to erase all of the evidence that our work even existed, who knows what else they might do. maybe nothing would stop them. But they can't stop the truth. I've made 50 copies of this tape in the last 2 days. 25 are being mailed to elected officials, 10 to religious leaders, and 10 to the major news networks, which I have no doubt they will destroy. And God help me, I understand it. No one wants to be the messenger. Not when you know for a fact that you're going to be shot. But I'm not afraid of judgment. Not from any of them. Not when what's coming is... You might have noticed that my math didn't quite add up a minute ago, and there's a reason for that. There are 5 copies of the tape that I am not mailing. I am taking these copies with me as I drive across the country, and at each new state I drive through, at the first video rental store in that state that I come across, I will rent a new release movie, place a copy of our tape in its box, and return it to the store to be rented out again. You can call it irresponsible or an act of treason against the undisturbed future of the human race. But people need to be told. Hopefully, through one or more of these avenues, the message will get out. And God willing, or hopefully the message will spread. Hopefully it will be believed. Because if people know what's coming, what's waiting for us, then maybe there's a chance we can stop it somehow. Maybe something can be done. Maybe shooting the messenger won't matter when you're telling them there's a gun to their head. I'm going to go now, and I'll let the story speak for itself. All I ever wanted to do, as a journalist and as a human being, is to give the public the facts. The conclusions you draw are your own. God help us.
I think it's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. But it makes me want to tear up every medical book I can find.
For nurse Emma Cantor, less than 5 years out of med school, a full-time private nursing job for reclusive millionaire Mark Valdemar seemed like a dream come true.
You know, he's a very private man. I still don't know how he makes his money. Stocks or something, I guess. I don't even know where he's from. You know, a month or two ago, there was that piece on him in Forbes about how he was supposedly on his way to becoming a billionaire, and it didn't even seem to faze him. I couldn't even tell from the look on his face if it was true.
While rumors abound about Mr. Valdemar's finances, love life, and even where in the world his family originally came from, one thing is for certain. He's a man who knows what he wants. Weeks before we interviewed Emma, we caught up with Valdemar's attorney to ask some questions. The unscheduled interview was a little less than friendly. Ned Downey, A&C News. Can I ask you a few questions?
I believe my secretary told you you'd need to make an appointment.
Your firm represents Mark Valdemar, isn't that right? Is there any truth to the rumors that Mr. Valdemar has been investing heavily into companies that specialize in medical technology? Is it true that he's been bankrolling controversial practitioners of holistic medicine like William Poole?
Get that thing out of my face.
What about the rumors that Valdemar's hired a full-time nurse?
Who told you that?
Even private job postings are a matter of public record, sir.
You want public record? Then, on the record, no comment. Mr. Valdemar has the same right to privacy as you or I, and he doesn't owe anyone any justification for that. This recent speculation about his health on your channel and others is nothing more than a sad attempt to prop up your flagging ratings. Now get out of my way. I gotta catch a cab.
We thought the interview and the story was over, and we went back to our studio to await a formal cease and desist letter. But when we got there, we were greeted by a message on our answering machine.
Hello, Mr. Downey. I heard you ran into my attorney today. I just got off the phone with him, actually. I think he thought we should sue you. Listen, call my assistant when you get this. The number is... I've got a proposal for you.
5 days later, after a 3-hour drive from Baltimore to a hidden estate in the rural countryside, I sat down across a large oak desk from Mark Valdemar. Although I had initially planned for an off-the-record meeting, he insisted we bring our cameras.
Did you have any trouble finding the place?
Although he stayed seated the entire time we were in his home office, and despite his rumored poor health, I found Valdemar to be a warm and genial host. He looked a little thinner than the last time he had been seen in public, and his lush velvet bathrobe covered up his arms and most of his neck, but his face and playful eyes seemed as lively as ever.
I have to apologize, before we start, for not shaking your hand when you came in.
Oh, that's all right. You don't have to...
I just wanted you to know that I wasn't being rude. I have my reasons.
Of course. So, I'm sure you understand that this is a little irregular. I don't think I've ever interviewed someone without knowing why.
That's the advantage to being rich, you see. People tend to show up when you call them. I want you to know that I don't take this lightly. This isn't about my wealth or my ego. This is about something important.
And what is that exactly?
Well, this may not be a surprise to anyone who's been reading the tabloids or even watching the news, but I am very sick. In our current moment, my illness is well known, despite the preference of the Reagan administration that no one talk about it openly.
You're referring to AIDS.
I am.
Do you know how you contracted it?
I do.
At this point, Valdemar rolled up one of the sleeves of his bathrobe, then held his exposed arm up into the light so that we and our camera could see his forearm, which was spotted with patches of scarred-over track marks.
I have lived my life in search of extreme experiences. First as an addict and then as a mystic. I have lived in this world's deepest slums and meditated on its highest mountains. It was meditation, in fact, that broke me of the habit. And it was in Tibet that I learned how much control the mind can have over the body. There is no separation, not really. Only the common distinction in computing of software and hardware. Some think the relationship only goes one way, the hardware of the body influencing the software of the brain. But what if that weren't true? What if what the mystics and magicians have always told us was essentially correct? That there is some ghost in the machine, some substance capable of changing the nature of its own container. Ectoplasm, for the lack of a more accurate term.
What does that mean? In simple terms. Terms our audience can understand.
In its simplest terms, is the mind a substance? And where does it go when the body dies?
For the next half hour, Valdemar told me about his relationship with this man, hypnotherapist and practitioner of holistic medicine, William Poole. He told me they met at a private health clinic in Switzerland, where Valdemar had gone as the symptoms of his disease progressed.
I was so ashamed of it at the time. I didn't want anyone to see me. But now I wish more than anything that I had taken pictures so there was some proof. I was almost skeletal. I had lost 60 pounds. My skin was cracked and yellow.
And Dr. Poole's treatments helped you recover?
Not alone, but combined with transcendental meditation, measured doses of ayahuasca, and some other experimental medicines, I was able to restore my body to an altered form of its previous health. It was like a miracle at first, but I can feel it starting to fade. And I know that without it, I would be dead by now.
Do you understand why the public might be skeptical about that? About all of this?
I do. In fact, that's why you're here. I want to propose to you, and to the American people, an experiment. If the human body remains suspended at the final precipice of life, can the mind survive beyond the point of death? Can it witness what comes after?
Beyond the... What do you mean, suspended?
Brain waves, the heartbeat. These are products of the body, but they are subordinate to the mind. In a variety of trance states, induced through meditation, hypnosis, chemical agents, the heartbeat slows, and the brain waves lower.
But when someone dies, don't they just stop?
They tend to.
But yours won't?
If Descartes was right, if the mind and body are separate things, when the body goes into the ground, where must go the unbound mind?
I don't know. No one does.
Then why don't we all find out together?
To learn more, we reached out for a phone interview with Dr. Poole.
None of this is new, not really. There's a long tradition within so-called fringe science of pushing the limits of the mind's control of the body. You can look at Dr. Hal Raglan's book, The Shape of Rage, and his pioneering work in the field of psychoplasmics. Or, slightly further on the fringes, you could look at Zachary Devon's Flesh Control. People may find this idea frightening, but it's not unprecedented. As for Valdemar, one afternoon, after we finished up a scheduled treatment, he explained to me just what he explained to you. He wants to plumb the depths, as it were. He wants to be the first psychonaut to dive into the final frontier, to treat his body as a ship, and his mind as a diving bell.
What do you think he expects to find?
What does any scientist want to find? An answer.
And you think he's in a suitable mental state?
His body, his vessel, is falling apart. I imagine he thinks there's no better time to shove off at the dock and go sailing.
But all the flowery language aside, don't you have a duty to prevent harm from coming to your patients? Don't you think it's cruel to artificially extend his life in search of what might ultimately turn out to be nothing?
Is that what you're afraid of, Mr. Downey? That he'll find nothing?
What did the Pym Society expect to find, Dr. Poole? You were at their compound that day, weren't you? Do you think they found what they were looking for? What do you think about Dr. Poole?
Guy gives me the creeps. You heard about that group he was a part of in India, right? Supposedly the whole little cult killed themselves, and he's the only one left. Got scared and backed out at the last minute or something.
How does Mr. Valdemar feel about him?
Oh, he loves him. He thinks they're kindred spirits or whatever. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't trust somebody whose job it is to get inside my head.
Do you think Dr. Poole has an undue influence on him?
I don't know.
Is Mr. Valdemar different since he met Dr. Poole?
Absolutely.
Later that day, I went to talk to Valdemar again, this time without the crew and cameras. I didn't know it at the time, but the microphone attached to my lapel was still transmitting. I need to ask you something. Did Poole put you up to this? To get some kind of free promotion for his clinic? Or as some kind of recruitment tool? Is he trying to get the band back together because he missed out on the last mass suicide?
I'm not sure I know what you mean.
I'm sure you're aware, but when men as wealthy and potentially influential as you are vulnerable, there's a class of human vulture that sweeps in to pick at the corpse.
Yes, they're called reporters.
You know what I mean, okay? You do. And if Poole has suggested things to you or led you down certain paths, I'd encourage you to question whether or not you'd have walked them before you met him. Please. I'm serious. I'm not trying to embarrass you. My grandfather died when I was 10 years old. But before he died, he got taken in by some huckster revivalist preacher who told him that if he gave the church more money, then more money would come back to him. Enough to keep his widowed wife comfortable for the rest of her life. But when my grandfather died, guess what? There wasn't any money. He'd given away everything and got nothing back. And without him, my grandmother lost the house and she had to move in with us. Do you know how many times I had to hear her crying through the wall?
I understand your point, and I appreciate your concern. From you, it should qualify you for sainthood. But I am not confused, or vulnerable, or any other words you'd like to assign to me. I am sick, I am dying, and I want it to mean something.
It does mean something.
No, that's... I was born lucky, by which I mean I was born rich. I know that. I know what it means. I spent my youth traveling the world, but everywhere I went, all I saw was more and more desperate poverty. Children living in gutters, men and women selling their souls. And when I came home to the huge, expensive house my father's money bought, I just felt guilty. I still do. And that original pain, that wound, I tried to scratch with a needle. I hoped that if I numbed myself enough, drowned myself in enough pleasure, I could stop seeing it. I lived that way for years. Then, when I hit bottom and had to get clean, I learned about meditation. And it was the first real peace I had felt since I was a child. But by then, my luck ran out. Then I got sick. There are days when I think that all I was brought into this world to do is witness suffering. I thought I knew what it was, what it looked like. But I was wrong. When I was first diagnosed, I went to a clinic for other people with HIV. And it was one of the closest things to hell I've ever seen. Men, women, children, whose only crime was being alive. They were being punished for needing blood transfusions, for who they loved, or for trying to save someone's life at the scene of an accident without wearing gloves. And I had just the thing that was killing them, slowly wasting them away as they fought desperately to cling onto life. I had invited it in. I chose it. I watched people stronger than me, better than me, die with looks on their faces like frightened children. And I told myself that no matter how long it took, I would find out what they had seen in their final moments. What was waiting for all of us beyond the black of our imagination. Because we deserve to know. They deserved to know that there is an end to pain. I have to know if there's something better waiting for us, Mr. Downey. Or if there's nothing waiting at all. Don't we deserve some peace of mind?
I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't mean to... I don't know. I'm just sorry.
Do you know what life is, Mr. Downey? A chemical process through which people use each other to get their buttons pushed. Poole is using me, and I'm using him, and you and I are using each other. We are all users. As long as we're open about that, there's nothing wrong with it. Why should the afterlife be any different?
After our initial round of interviews, I wasn't sure if Valdemar would ever reach out to us again. I worried that my skepticism had offended him, or that he had decided to find another reporter to see if they wanted his story of a lifetime. But a few months later, I received a call late one Friday afternoon from Valdemar's nurse.
Mr. Downey? It's Emma Cantor. Mr. Valdemar wanted me to call you. He says he can feel the end coming, and that he and Dr. Poole are going to begin their experiment tomorrow night. He'd like you to call back to confirm you'll be there to document it.
I explained the situation to ANC channel leadership, and was given a small crew to help me film what Valdemar wanted the world to see. And the next night, we returned to his expansive estate, eagerly awaiting a medical miracle. In the interest of proving no trickery occurred on behalf of any of us here at ANC, the footage will be presented uncut. Give me a couple of wides just to give it a sense of the space, you know? Some close-ups of the machines, too. Nothing fancy, Troy. The story's going to be flashy enough on its own. Dr. Poole? Dr. Poole, do you have a minute to answer a few questions?
No, I have to finish checking the equipment.
When we spoke with Mr. Valdemar, he said that your treatments had helped him return to good health, but looking at him now, he's gaunt, jaundiced. Are you nervous about potentially being connected to another high-profile death? This time on camera?
He stopped my treatments, Mr. Downey, less than a week after you sat down with him.
Is that true?
Ask him yourself.
All right, come on, Troy. Just keep filming. We can get the B-roll later. Let's talk to Valdemar. Mr. Valdemar?
Mr. Downey, prompt as ever. You remember Emma?
Yes, Mark, Dr. Poole told me you stopped your treatments. Is that true?
Well, yes. After you agreed to document my transition beyond known life, I decided it was time to put my mouth where my money was, so to speak. Don't let it disturb you. I've already lived so many unearned days. Throwing a few away is my right.
And forgive me for saying so, but you do look sick now. Would you mind if your nurse updates our viewers on your current health?
Of course. Emma?
Mr. Valdemar has lost...
Look at the camera, please.
Mr. Valdemar has lost 40 pounds in the last 7 weeks. His kidneys are shutting down. His blood pressure is dangerously low, and as of last week, he is experiencing sudden onset macular degeneration in both eyes. Without daily dialysis and medication, he will be blind within the next week and will likely be dead within the next month.
Thank you, Emma. Now, Mr. Valdemar, what does it feel like to hear that kind of diagnosis for a man in your condition?
I find it unsurprising.
Do you find it frightening?
I imagine I feel much like Neil Armstrong. Nervous, but certain of the course.
And can you explain all of these machines hooked up to you?
Not all of them, but I can do my best. Despite your presence here today, I know that there will be skeptics, non-believers, who will not take kindly to our results should this experiment bear fruit. So, to that end, these diodes will record my heartbeat, my blood pressure, brain activity, and all other traceable signs of life from this moment until the end of our experiment.
And when will that be?
That depends on our success. Ideally, I would like to explore what lies beyond for as long as my body allows me. If Dr. Poole's theories are correct, then my body could live on without food, water, or even air for weeks, perhaps months.
That's remarkable. Do you really think it's possible?
I do. Dr. Poole,
Ready when you are, Mark.
let us begin. First, I will assume the lotus position, as generations of Buddhists seeking nirvana have done before me. God willing, I am about to achieve Sambhogakaya, the body of limitless form, and just as the living Buddhas do not rot, but mummify, my body will be suspended as my mind is unbound. Like the bodhisattvas, my human form may begin to exude a rainbow aura. If it does, I have achieved Rigpa, total knowledge. If that happens, I must be awakened and questioned by Dr. Poole. Quickly. In my fleeting hands, I may hold eternal truth. You may begin.
What are you doing? Poole, what are you doing with that needle?
Mark needs a chemical jumpstart, something to slow the physical processes of the body and help him reach a meditative state so that his body can die.
And you're giving him heroin? You're gonna make him overdose on purpose?
Mr. Downey, it's all right. This is what I want. And I assure you, to the addict, there is nothing closer to heaven.
Valdemar, Mark, I really don't think...
Do you know why I chose you, Mr. Downey, to bear my message?
Why?
Because you're unscrupulous enough to be useful to me. Now, please, stop performing for the camera and act like the man that secretly recorded me and pretended he didn't mean to.
You knew?
Of course. I told you in that very conversation, we're all users, Mr. Downey. Let me be of use. Dr. Poole.
Injecting now.
One last thing, Mr. Downey. That story about your grandfather, that was a lie, wasn't it?
Yes.
Well, it makes for good TV.
You're going to need to move back. The camera too. Zoom it in if you have to, but stay clear of the equipment. Listen to me, Mark. Just let the rest of the world fade. and listen to my voice. Feel your breathing slow. Become aware of your heartbeat. Allow your mind to be pulled into the spiral, into the whirlpool of samsara, and imagine it cycling down.
Can you hear what he's saying?
You
Is the
are
mic
a
picking it up?
sailor
A
on
bunch
the
of spiritual
seas of
nonsense,
your
right?
Karma, more substance than identity, as your mind sleeps deeper. It is a time for transformation, for metempsychosis, and the transmigration of your soul. Leave your body behind. Let your mind pull itself free and become unbound. Your mind can go anywhere. Your mind can do anything. Let your body die to this world and your mind float free.
Oh, he's calling us back in. Watch your step, watch the wires. Dr. Poole, can you take us through what just happened?
Mark, can you hear me? Are you asleep?
I am asleep. I am dying.
It's all right, Mark. You can let go. Your mind and body are separate now. You can let the body take its natural course. Nurse, turn up the volume on the monitor.
Is he?
Mark, are you still asleep?
I have been sleeping. Now I am dead.
His lips aren't moving. It doesn't even sound like his... The voice isn't even coming from his mouth, really.
He's done it. Mark? Mark, do you see anything? Turn the monitor down.
Give me time.
We waited by Valdemar's body for the next 4 hours, but no matter how we tried to question him, he didn't answer. His body was dead by every traceable metric, and the only part of him that seemed to continue to move were his lungs. They swelled and deflated over the space of minutes, as if the body was breathing in slow motion, and the small brainwave monitor continued to flick back and forth on rolling paper like a seismograph detecting an earthquake. My cameraman and I stayed at a small motel near the Valdemar estate for the next 3 days, waiting to see if he would speak again or if his body would shut down, but nothing changed. Finally, we were brought back to Baltimore and assigned to new stories, and soon enough it was as though the bizarre night had never happened. Channel leadership at ANC declined to run the segment, saying it was both unfinished and speculative, and unfortunately, I had little room to disagree. With this final derailing, 7 long months ago, it seemed as though the case of Mark Valdemar's death had been closed for good. Until last week, when I received one final call from his nurse.
Mr. Downey? It's Emma Cantor. Dr. Poole fired me today. He hasn't been letting me see Mr. Valdemar. He said my services are no longer needed. I don't know what but I heard them the other night. Both of them. I heard Mr. Valdemar's voice, clear as day, with that buzzing sound. He was screaming. I don't know if Poole's after the money or what he wants, but please, Mr. Valdemar didn't have any friends to... You've got to help him. He's He's still alive in there.
That night, my cameraman and I drove out to the Valdemar estate. We came prepared for a confrontation with Dr. Poole, and in desperate need of some answers only he could give. Like the previous segment, this will be presented without cuts. And if he doesn't open the door, Troy, then we're going to the police and we'll come back here with a warrant. Dr. Poole, it's Ned Downey, ANC News. Open up. All right, f*** this. I'm breaking off the knob. Come on.
Are you sure this is a good idea?
Yes, Troy. I'm going to win us a Pulitzer. Now, come on.
This is breaking and entering, you know.
Oh. Well, if we could just talk to the property owner, I'll bet we could clear this up. Where's Valdemar?
He's not well enough for visitors.
Emma said he talked.
She'd say anything. Did she tell you that she was fired because I caught her stealing the silverware?
She wasn't fired because she's an irresponsible quack with a rescinded medical license and a trail of exploited patients half a mile long? Oh, wait. That's you. I don't know how you skated when 75 of your little Pym Society friends drank poisoned Kool-Aid and left you the only survivor, but I swear to God, you're not getting out from under this one. Whatever you're after, whatever you've been after, it stops now. If Valdemar's still alive and if he's trapped in that state, it's wrong, Poole. Didn't you ever hear anyone say do no harm?
Oh, spare me the self-righteous act, Mr. Downey. You and I both know why you're really here. He's my patient, not your headline.
Why don't we go ask him? Come on, Troy.
Stop that! Get back here! I'll call the police!
Go ahead.
No, you... Listen to me. Listen to me, you vainglorious little prick. I had to know. Can't you understand? In India, I watched everyone I knew die. For nothing. For the desperate hope that there's a better place waiting. But I couldn't. I was too much of a coward to... They had such faith. And I needed proof. I needed something tangible I could truly believe in. I had to know that they died for a reason. And now it's... now I know.
What is it, Poole? What did Valdemar see? Come on, Troy.
Can we really?
Just leave him. Valdemar? From this point on, footage has been pixelated and blurred to maintain the standards and practices of network television. Even censored, I feel the need to warn you. The footage you are about to see is intensely disturbing. If you have children, send them out of the room. Whenever the blurring of the footage makes it unclear what is happening on screen, I will describe what occurs in voiceover narration. When we entered the room, we found Valdemar sitting in the same lotus position he had taken 7 months ago. His body was gaunt and emaciated, and his skin was impossibly dry and leathery, with spiderweb cracks running across every inch of exposed flesh. All of his hair had fallen out, and his eyes had no pupils, only a dull amber-yellow color that filled them.
Oh, God. Oh, I'm gonna throw up.
Look at these medical notes. He's near total bodily fusion. Organs distended and partially absorbed into petrified husk of skin and muscle. Bones are now hollow. Lungs remain in substandard motion. Brain activity remains erratic. Brain activity? Oh, God. The brain monitor's still running. It's not peaks and valleys. It's just black. His brain it's lit up like a Christmas tree. Wait, do you hear that? Are you picking it up on the microphone? Oh, God. It's his breath. His throat's too dry to speak. But he's screaming. He's been screaming the whole time.
The nurse, Emma, she heard him talk.
Yes, but with the buzzing, not from his mouth. Like when he died, and his voice... His lips weren't moving, but... The heart monitor. The voice stopped when Poole turned down the heart monitor. Valdemar? Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's Ned Downey. Are you all right? Your body is... You're screaming. What has Dr. Poole been doing to you?
He wanted to know if his friends are here. And he wouldn't. He didn't believe me when I told him. But we're all here.
Here? Where are you, Valdemar? Your body's dead. Where is your mind?
An endless ocean. I was right. The mind is material. And when we die, it comes here. It joins the burning sea.
The sea? What do you mean?
Churning, boiling waves. No end, no boundaries. Waves made of burning, bubbling pitch. Candle wax. No lights. Only fire. Liquid that scalds, sears, violates. Wax waves with faces. I can feel them all. We can all feel each other. Pure feeling, pure thought, pure agony. All our pain, all our suffering, our thoughts, our minds are burning and bubbling and dissolving together into one. We boil in the dark, all of us, forever. Do you hear me? It's waiting for all of us. And the things that feed on the wax feed on all that we are. Soar down to scoop it up in their mouths, and they don't even care. We're nothing. Downey. We're not even cattle. We...
Valdemar?
You've got to warn them, Downey. You've got to warn them all. You've got to tell them that it doesn't matter who they are or what they do. They're coming here.
There's nowhere else? No heaven?
Heaven is only a word, Mr. Downey, a lie. Hell is the way it feels.
Valdemar, you have to wake up. You have to get out of your trance. You've got to let go. You can't stay here anymore.
No! Please. Don't leave me alone.
Wake up, Valdemar. Now.
It can wait forever. You'll be here sooner than you think. Do you hear me? Sooner than you think!
I'm going to attempt to describe what happened next to the best of my abilities. These words have been chosen carefully, and any ambiguity or lack of clarity in meaning is only because of the lack of clarity in the event itself. All at once, Valdemar's body began to change. His eyes started to glow, almost, and the cracks in his skin around the eyes started to char and flake off. His head, it seemed like some sort of pressure burst, and a circular band of rainbow light flared out from the back of his head and seared itself onto the wall. His skin burned off at the cracks, and the flesh underneath began to seep through. And in less than a minute, he dissolved. He melted. Like wax. There was nothing left on the cushion in front of Troy and I but a nearly liquid mass of loathsome, detestable putrescence. Whatever happened, it burned the circuits out of every machine that was attached to him. The heart rate monitor melted, and the brainwave monitor started to smolder. We found out later that it had turned the fuse box into molten slag. These are the facts, as we know them. This is what we documented. We cannot speak to the truth of Valdemar's words or tell you why Dr. William Poole committed himself to a mental institution early the next morning. But from all of us here at ANC News, we just thought you deserved to know. Just in case. And if you're afraid that it might be true, my only advice is this. Stay alive as long as you can. Maybe there's a way out, or maybe it's not forever. Maybe there's still something out there that cares. I've been Ned Downey. Good night, and God bless you. God bless us all. Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar was written and directed by Jonathan Inbody, and adapted from the short story of the same name by Edgar Allan Poe. It was edited by Jeffrey Lavin, with music composed and performed by Samantha Hunt. Downey, the narrator, was played by Jonathan Inbody, and Valdemar was played by Mark Bogumil. Dr. Poole was played by Justin Pope, Charleston Harvey played Valdemar's nurse, Andy Rich played Valdemar's attorney, and Jeffrey Lavin played Troy Casey.
Gray Matter is a Word Search Media production. Any similarities to real people, places, or things is purely coincidental. Be kind. Rewind.